The pandemic changed the world, didn't it? Change can be good. Change inspires innovation. So which comes first, innovation or influence? Well, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Innovation means finding a way to do something more efficiently, and influence leads to innovation, which in turn increases influence, and so on. So it's just like a cycle. But why innovate? Well, because every business has the same goal: to be world-class through everyday changes by meeting the needs of demanding customers, all in a constantly changing marketplace environment. Isn't that the truth? I mean, consumers are savvier than ever. They have unlimited access to information at their fingertips. No longer do they blindly follow advisors, consultants, and agents. They recognize that different isn't always better, but better is always different. We can make a mess of our lives, our businesses, and our neighborhoods by adding change upon change. But true innovation transforms change. It gets rid of the old ideas that really don't serve us anymore, and then it brings in new, fresh, clean ideas that are not mangled up with the consequences of jerry-rigging. Still, before any significant innovation can occur, influencers must be identified. Influencers are leaders. Leaders are self-aware, and they use their strengths to get things done. Leaders also understand the strengths and limitations of their teams. Our data indicates that organizations that educate their teams to maximize individual strengths and minimize limitations are on average 20% more effective and profitable than organizations that ignore this important leadership step. This is why we developed the influencer identifier. The influence identifier divides influencers into 4 basic categories. You may be very strong in one area, and so you can hardly even relate to how the other people think. So here's a newsflash for you. Not everybody thinks the way that you do. But most of us are a kind of a mixture of 2 or 3 different influencer styles. So let me give you a little bit of a background here. Productive influencers are highly logical, and their main idea is just to get things done, however it needs to happen. Relational influencers are highly emotional, and they feel very deeply about people. They get attached to things also, but very deeply about people. Engaging influencers are emotional and logical, but they're just looking to have some fun and enjoy life. Diplomatic influencers are logical, and they seek peace without conflict. First, let's say hello to the productives. Over 30 years of research has uncovered that 25% of the American population is identified as productives. They naturally influence through their confidence, their decisiveness, their vision, their assertiveness. Productives can also be, surprise, surprise, arrogant, impatient, coercive, and demanding. But mostly they just like to control things, and especially people. You know them, okay? They make great financial advisors, doctors, trial lawyers, and of course, law enforcement. They love the power. Are you kidding me? It comes with a gun? I am totally in. Several years ago, we were doing some consulting with a huge home improvement company. Now, you would all know who it is, so I'm not going to tell you the name. But the manager said to me, Lorette, we've got one branch out there in DC that is just doubling all the sales of all the other branches in the entire country. And the cancellations are almost non-existent. So I want to find out what's going on there. Okay, so I went ahead and I rode with the salesperson. We actually went into a home, sat across the kitchen table from this couple. And 2 hours later, 12-step closing sequence, we emerged with this signed contract. Now, that wasn't a surprise to me, but what was a surprise is that Jim walks up and he starts walking out the front door and he says, hey, let's go see how this is going to happen. So he pulls a can out of his bag and he points it to the side of the house and starts spraying red paint. He said, we're going to start right over here. They're going to continue right over here. And I could see the couple's eyes as big as saucers. Every muscle was clenching. And the husband's jaw was just dropping. And I was in shock. But you know what? Jim turns around with this huge, unassuming smile and says, Okay, so now when would you like to make the appointment to get these walls covered? They could not get on his schedule fast enough. I kid you not. So, hey, that's the secret, you know. Reds do get things done, maybe with a tad bit of subtle coercion, but nevertheless, and I'm not giving you Reds, I'm not giving you productives out there the permission to do, you know, something like that. But anyway, we're going to go on to the second type here. That's the relationals. Okay, so these are relational influencers. It's 35% of the population. These people are sincere. They're thoughtful, committed, empathetic, and dependable. You know them. They're bleeding hearts. They make great nurses, teachers, and engineers. But don't let all that goodness fool you. They have flaws just like the rest of us, although they'll never admit it. But the relationals can be judgmental and worry-prone and unforgiving. I was doing a seminar for 200 managers and employees at the Department of Energy, and one relational raises her hand. She says, I will never forgive somebody who doesn't thank me for the thank you note that I gave them. And I'm like, wait a minute. You mean to say that you will never forgive somebody who doesn't thank you for the thank you note that you gave them for giving you a gift? Okay, that's brutal. Where does it stop? I mean, that cycle could go on forever. Like it's like a quid pro quo on steroids. So I know the reason they do this, though, because they're the type of people that they rarely make mistakes. Okay, so it's really hard for them to conjure up that you are making all these different mistakes. They would rarely make mistakes. They're almost perfect. My sister is one of these relationals. She actually, we call her LaDawn Poppin. She's practically perfect in every way. Well, I give you permission to make mistakes just like the engagers, okay? Engagers themselves are very forgiving because they do make a lot of mistakes and they sort of skip that whole forgiveness and mistake and apology cycle sometimes. I know I'm one of them. And I remember seeing a friend at a social event, kind of an old friend. I hadn't seen him for a while. And I said, hey, how are you? My husband slaps me on the thigh and he says, Lorette, do you not remember that he owes you $5,000? And I'm like, no, I didn't remember that. It's so good to see him. So did I mention forgetful? Yes, engagers can be forgetful and forgiving, so it's all good. Engagers make up 20% of the population. They emanate, though, 80% of the sunshine. They are playful, enthusiastic, trusting, optimistic, and charismatic. They make great event planners, performers, and sales reps. Engagers also express enthusiasm for whatever they want to do, but just don't ask them to suffer through a boring job or lock them in a cubicle. Still, all of that unbridled electricity can cause sparks and sometimes fire. They can be impulsive and obnoxious, and then also they can be naive as well. All right, lastly, we have the diplomats, okay? They make up 20% of the population. They're great listeners. They're considerate, kind, adaptable. They also make great peacekeepers, dentists, and corporate attorneys. On the flip side, diplomats can be conflict avoiders and also very indecisive. They sit quietly, and if asked their opinion, they will sum up a 2-hour meeting in just 2 sentences. They don't say a lot, but trust me, they see it all. Dad was a diplomat. Mom and Dad came home one time to see that us kids had not finished our chores. Mom immediately blurts out, all right, you kids are getting a spanking. Choose who you want to get your spanking from, me or your dad. And I'm thinking, okay, well, Mom's a meanie, so and Dad's super, super kind, so I'm going to choose, no contest, Dad. And so LaDawn, my older brother and sister, I couldn't believe that they chose Mom. I mean, who would ever choose Mom, a productive, to give them a spanking? Well, they did. And so we're listening to these screams come from across the house, and my dad looks at me and says, are you ready for this? And I'm like, okay, yep, I'm ready. So I drape myself over his lap and just brace myself for the spanking. And here it comes. I started laughing. I'm like, are you kidding? And he says, shh, we got to try that again. And this time it's going to hurt really bad. I was like, okay. So now I was really braced. Here again, exact same pat. But this time I smartened up. I dug deep and I got those Academy Award winning actress out, and I bellowed to the top of my lungs. Ow! Dad looks at me and he says, "That's more like it." And he gives me a little bit of a squeeze. You can trust those diplomats. They're super kind. We've gone through a little bit of the different personalities here and how they influence people. Now we can take those individual personalities and populate the SLOT framework. We combine individual strengths and limitations with external opportunities and threats. So just from a business standpoint, what are the opportunities and the threats that occur in your business? Where are your strengths and limitations on your team that we can deal with these different issues? Well, here's some great questions that you can ask yourself and your team. How can you use your strengths to take advantage of the opportunities? How can you take advantage of your strengths to avoid real and potential threats? How can you use your opportunities to overcome limitations that you're experiencing? And then also, how can you minimize your limitations, manage risk, and also avoid threats? Your strengths and limitations are individual to you. With the right plan in place, your opportunities can be maximized and your threats minimized. Don't let anybody take your market share. You be the influencer. Remember, this is your future, your influence, your innovation. What are you going to do to claim it?